Hello and welcome to the radiotimes.com Doctor Who podcast. My name's Hugh Fullerton, and this week I'm joined by our extra special guest panelist, Helen Daly. Hello, Helen. Thanks for coming again. I say guest. You're here pretty often. You're a regular, if not face, then voice on the radiotimes.com Doctor Who podcast. But it's always lovely to have you. And part of the reason Helen's here is because Helen is the world's biggest Alex Kingston / River Song fan, and that's what this week's episode is all about. Specifically, we're talking about River Song and the chances of her teaming up with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. Well, what inspired this, you might ask? Well, we were thinking a little bit about rumours of Jodie Whittaker leaving this series and what the team behind Doctor Who might be trying to squeeze into her final episodes. But with also these rumours that Catherine Tate was going to be in the series, which have since been debunked. But then we thought, which other characters would be good to slot into Jodie's final series if this is the case? And then Helen spoke to Alex Kingston for International Women's Day and actually asked her on this, well, you asked her about this very topic, didn't you?
I did indeed. Yes, thanks for the lovely introduction. I'm guilty as charged, the biggest River Song fan ever. So yeah, it was a pleasure to speak to the lady herself.
So you asked Alex a bunch of stuff about Doctor Who, about The Ruby's Curse, which is her new Doctor Who book, which I can't remember if that's out yet, but I think it's out pretty soon, maybe in May. You also asked, what's the deal? Is River going to meet Jodie's Doctor? What did she say to you?
So not a lot, as you could probably expect, but she didn't say no. She said that she would like to, and she would like to plant a big fat kiss on Jodie's Doctor, which I think, that's very River, really, isn't it? I think that's exactly what she'd do. I also asked her if there's a particular story that she'd like to be involved with. She said no, basically. She's just always open to getting involved. She loves being a part of Doctor Who. And the interesting quote that came out of that chat was, she said, "It would be a great shame if it were not to happen, let's put it that way." So of course the River Song fan in me squealed with delight when I heard those words. So I think she wants it. I think the world wants it. This has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that she was that strong on it, I think, was quite interesting because, sometimes these people kind of equivocate, think, "We'll never say never," and she's like, "No, it'd be bad if I wasn't." It would be like bad TV making. Well, she didn't quite say that. I don't want to put words into her mouth, but yeah, it is interesting. I think it's an interesting thing because we've seen obviously River with quite a few of the modern Doctors. She was obviously met David Tennant's 10th Doctor, spent most of her time with Matt Smith's 11th Doctor, but then they did actually bring her back to meet Peter Capaldi's Doctor, which was more or less, he wasn't supposed to be part of her story. The story was supposed to kind of conclude with Matt Smith's Doctor, with David Tennant's Doctor, and then they sort of kept changing when the end of the story was, and they kind of just found a way to include Peter Capaldi. So it's a funny way of doing it, but they basically have managed to find a way to get her sort of side by side with pretty much all the modern Doctors. And in the Big Finish stories, which Alex still does, she's done quite a lot of team ups with older, classic series Doctors, like Paul McGann was, I think, one of her first ones. So it seems possible and likely that you would see Jodie's Doctor and River Song together. The thing that is slightly odd about it is I kind of always thought, oh yeah, that might happen. But now if these rumors about Jodie leaving are true, it's a bit like, what time do they have to do that? There's 8 episodes left, possibly, of Jodie Whittaker. Are they going to find time to slot River Song in?
I think they'd have to bring her in as an arc, really, if they were going to do it. She'd have to probably be the main story for that season because they'd have to have a realistic reason to bring her back, right? But I guess, you hit the nail on the head. Anything is possible with River. She can technically come back at any point because the timeline is so wibbly wobbly, as we've come to know. So I think, bringing River Song back to meet Jodie's Doctor again would just add another layer to her character, again would add another layer to Jodie's Doctor, because every time the Doctor meets River, it's a different dynamic. It's always an interesting thing to see because it always changes what the Doctor does. The Doctor's kind of put on the back foot when he or she is with River, and I think it would be fantastic to see Jodie meet Alex Kingston. But I think it could happen. I obviously would love it to happen. One thing Alex Kingston also said was she would love to have River meet Missy, probably less likely to happen. But I mean, that would be one hell of a season for Jodie's Doctor if it was to happen.
I mean, that would almost be too much, I think. There'd just be so much fan service. Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. I do wonder whether there's any kind of reluctance to kind of involve River in the Jodie Doctor's kind of arc. Maybe it's easier to just keep, River off the board. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely see where you're coming from with that perspective. I think wherever you bring River in, it's complex because all of the relationships are completely at the same time intertwined but separate. Her firsts are his lasts, etc., etc. So I think if you wanted to go down that route, I think you could bring River in as a purely platonic friend, because theoretically with the Doctor's timeline, Jodie wouldn't have met Jodie would know River, but River wouldn't know Jodie. That kind of angle. So I think you could bring River in that sense. Again, whether you need to address the kind of romance or whether you just put it on and kind of let viewers make their own decision, that's fine too. I think they could do it, and I think it would be a shame not to explore it for the sake of kind of not necessarily keeping politically correct or incorrect or whatever. Just I think it would be really interesting to just see those two females meet, because they're two fantastic female characters. You could just bring it in and kind of let viewers make up their own minds on it.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think the thing is like there's a certain point where you kind of have to let people, you have to trust your audience, right? You kind of have to have a little faith. So yeah, obviously we've talked about the possibilities of whether this will happen. I actually think it's possible. I could see it being, in the grand 8-episode COVID series of Doctor Who, where they kind of can't go abroad. They're going to need to pull all the tricks out, right? We've seen rumours of Weeping Angels, Sontarans, Autons. There's loads of like ideas of these exciting characters and monsters coming back. Within that context, if they still want to excite people about the series when they're kind of more limited in what they can film and how many big scenes they can shoot with big crowds, maybe getting someone look back like Alex Kingston, similarly to how they did with John Barrowman, that would pay off. So that's my kind of thing of like, I think that's certainly possible. But what would the story be like? How would we like to see River come back? And what kind of adventure do we think we'd like to see them on? Would we see them back in the past? Would River know who the Doctor is, or would she, like you suggest, have no idea that this person is the Doctor? Similarly to the Husbands of River Song, right, which doesn't know Peter Capaldi is the Doctor until pretty near the end. I mean, you're a big fan. You must have spent some time thinking about this. What would you like to see?
Guilty. I think it would be really cool actually to see her team up with her Big Finish counterpart, Captain Jack. We've already seen Captain Jack brought back into the series. I think that would actually be a really easy way to bring River back in to the TV show. I think seeing them two on screen together, it's just double trouble, right? They're kind of made for each other. They're the perfect double act. So I think bringing them back on, having a kind of the Doctor with all of her friends around her, I think would actually be really sweet. Friends old and new, I think would be incredibly sweet, and a nice kind of swan song for Jodie's Doctor if it were to be her last series. I think, putting Alex Kingston up against the Weeping Angels again would always be good value. She was excellent in Matt Smith's series against them. So I think, it seems too tempting almost, to have the Weeping Angels all but confirmed for the new series, plus, hints of old characters coming back. I think River is just one announcement away, I think.
I think you could be right. I mean, actually, I'd not even considered the whole Jack and River thing, but it's a really good point. It seems odd that they haven't met, because in many ways they're very similar characters. I mean, they were both created by Stephen Moffat. They use the same gadgets. I think they've shared vortex manipulators and sonic cannons and squareness guns and so on. And they're both they have a similar vibe. They're both quite flirtatious. They're both these kind of adventurers who have their own lives and their own kind of time travels outside of the Doctor. Part of me is just like, how have they not done that before? How have they not put River and Jack together on screen? They've crossed over with Doctors. David Tennant's Doctor knew them both. I guess they didn't cross over with Matt Smith's Doctor. Never actually met Jack, did he? So I guess maybe it's just within the David Tennant era. But I think that's a good point. It sort of slightly blew my mind just thinking about that. I'm just like, how has no one done that? And if they're not planning it, they should listen to you on this and just be like, oh God, yeah, let's get cracking on that. If nothing
Well,
else,
like,
that's a big finish series, right?
I did ask Alex about it, what she would think about seeing Captain Jack and River Song on screen together. She said obviously she would love to do it. She loves working with John. She did say it might have to be after the 9 p.m. watershed though. So maybe if Torchwood comes back, that'd be quite fun that she could join the team.
To be fair, we've talked about Torchwood coming back quite a lot on this podcast, and I could see River slotting in quite nicely to that dynamic. We never actually thought about that. We never considered, River joining Torchwood. We talked a bit about Yaz joining Torchwood, but I could see that going quite interestingly. And I think it would be interesting because they did have quite an interesting dynamic, say Yaz and Jack in Revolution of the Daleks. I feel like if you kind of add River into that mix, I think especially considering how much Yaz kind of idolizes Jodie's Doctor and has this kind of like, I think some fans have read into it, but there is possibly some sort of romantic interest there. Possibly not, who knows? Mandip Girl has sort of said, not ruling it out, essentially. To see then the Doctor had this with a companion before, maybe that would kind of be a bit of an eye-opener for Yaz. And maybe, maybe Yaz would get annoyed about it because, there'd be this person who the Doctor married. The Doctor isn't this kind of like completely separate alien figure who never gets involved. I mean, wait till she meets Rose. I mean, let's not talk about that. But yeah, I could see, to be honest, when you think about it, you could see River kind of slightly changing the dynamics on the TARDIS. That said, it's tricky to know how it would work because obviously there's a new dynamic on the TARDIS when we next see them, because we've got Dan, played by John Bishop, who we haven't met yet. So we don't quite know how established it would be to be blown up as a dynamic. Like bringing Jack in, the first time he appeared, it was meeting these companions a series and a half in. Second time he appeared, it's after 2 full series. So it would be a little bit different. And there is a bit of me that wonders whether fitting Alex, and River into Jodie's last series is going to be a bit of a stretch, just in terms of like, they need to do a self-contained arc. It can't all be kind of like buzzy guest cast and whatever. They kind of want to do standalone stuff. That has been the big hallmark of this era of Doctor Who, right? It has been them wanting to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, I think. So, you do kind of wonder, would that be a bit forced and stuck in? But then I'm also like, how disappointing would it be if, Jodie, say, we don't even know this happens, but say Jodie regenerates at the end of this series, right? And then, maybe we get Alex Kingston back a few years down the line. Maybe she's back for the 60th anniversary or something. It would be quite disappointing that she never met the first female Doctor, because you just feel like the way Jack reacted to it was great. Like Jack kind of did have a reaction, but then kind of just moved on and got on with it. And like you said, I feel like River might do the same. And it feels like a missed opportunity almost to kind of play around with that idea. I mean, you could say the same thing about Missy, I suppose, but with that, it's a bit different because there is like a new version of the Master, played by Sacha Dhawan, obviously, who is out there. Like that character kind of carries on, and it would be, maybe a bit awkward to kind of bring back an older version, especially the way that Missy ended up. But yeah, with River, she's a bit like Jack. She's still out there, unlike a lot of Doctor Who characters. She's still out there. She's going around space. That's kind of what I said the other week about Jack. It's like he's just off in space somewhere. Same as Bill. Certain companions are just off. Clara in space generically, and they could pop in at any point. So it sort of feels like, why wouldn't they at least try? Do you know what I mean?
I think that's the thing, they would have to work very hard to shoehorn Alex Kingston back in, I guess. But the possibilities are endless. And I spoke to Alex Kingston, the head of International Women's Day, for a reason. She's one of the best female characters on Doctor Who. She has agency. She has just intelligence beyond belief. She's strong-willed, and I think she's a fantastic representation of a female character in sci-fi. So not to put her against the female in sci-fi at the moment, the Doctor, I think would be actually a great shame. But to echo Alex's words herself, but yeah, I think what I would fear is that they would bring her in again with a male Doctor, and you'd have those questions like, why did you skip Jodie's? But I think, like you say, it would have to be done for a reason. I personally would love to see it. I think it's probably just me being a little bit too hopeful to see River Song back, but there's plenty of iterations we can get her back. We don't necessarily have to have Alex Kingston back. We could have a different actress. We could have, younger River. That would work. We could have different elements of River's character because we haven't explored it all yet. So I think she's one of the characters that really will fit into most stories. But Whether they'll bring her back, I don't know. I think what's clear from talking to Alex Kingston is that she loves being a part of the Doctor Who history. She loves being part of the canon. And I don't think her time on Doctor Who is up just yet.
Seems like a good ending point. Although you have also reminded me that River could regenerate for a bit there, couldn't she? Despite what I said, I completely forgot about that, which shows how much I pay attention, probably. But what do you think, listening at home? Would you like to see Alex Kingston team up with Jodie Whittaker? Do you think it's on the cards? And what would you like River and the Doctor to get up to in the next appearance? You can check out more news and speculation about the next series of Doctor Who on radiotimes.com, alongside ongoing features and news stories about the latest Big Finish, Chris Eccleston news and things like that, as well as previous editions of this podcast, which you can find on YouTube, on the radiotimes.com website, and on things like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those things, all the good things where you find those sort of things. We'll be back next week with a new podcast. Until then, I've been Hugh.
I've been Helen.
And we have also not been part of Doctor Who Series 13, unless River is. That doesn't make sense. Goodbye.